Coming up on today's episode.
Well, the vendor's got someone representing them.
Correct.
Why not the buyer?
Yep.
You're trying to negotiate against a person that's trained to deal with negotiation on a daily basis. That's crazy to me. If you don't do this in your job, or you're not a good negotiator, you're going up against a professional. They're going to absolutely take advantage of you.
Dodgy advice and bad decisions can cost you big in real estate. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Jo Agresta, and it's time to take control of your property journey together. Welcome back, everyone, to the No BS Real Estate Podcast, your listening how-to guide to the Australian finance and real estate market. I'm your host, Jo Agresta, and today we have our very special guest, Rob Panetta, with us from Lux Buyers Agents. Thank you so much for being here, Rob.
No, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. And yeah.
Let's get cracking with property. I love having property people on the show, like buyers agents like myself, because you always unpack so much cool stuff in the episode, and it's really good to bounce off someone that understands the whole property game.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely want to share that knowledge with everyone so they can make better decisions at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what it's all about. And that's why our listeners are tuning in today. So let me give you a bit of background on Rob and who we're talking to. So we're addressing the unique challenges and also the exciting opportunities that come with purchasing not only high value properties, but any home in the market. So when you're buying property, it's always good to have someone in your corner, someone like Rob. So if you're in the market, whether for premium real estate or normal real estate or just your first home, your second home, or maybe you're looking at investing and starting up a portfolio, this episode's for you. So Rob, like I said, you're the founder of Lux Buyers Agents. You're an expert in the luxury market space, but you're also looking at, you do a lot. Like we were talking right before the show and you were telling me, I don't just do Lux, I actually do the whole suite, whether you're looking to invest or whether you're looking to buy a first home or second home, or even portfolio management. So that's a really broad, space to be in. And it's awesome that you actually cover all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, we essentially like to look after the client, whether they want to buy, whether they want to sell, or whether they want to build out their portfolio. So I'm a buyer's advocate, I'm a vendor advocate, and I also help investors around the country. So doesn't matter the price point, whether it's 100,000 to multi-million, I can help you all the way through your whole journey. Whereas, a typical buyer's agent will just stick in their space, and then you'll have a vendor advocate, they'll stick in their space, and then you'll have investor-only BAs. Whereas I'm sort of that triple threat, so to speak. So I do all three. So I bring a wealth of knowledge and can see both sides of the transaction.
Well, that's what was really interesting. The triple threat aspect is huge because, like you said, I asked you at the very beginning, I said, what's your niche? And you said, my niche is really everything. I'm not really stuck in one pigeonhole, but your preferred location is, I think you said, the northern suburbs.
Yeah. So I'm an inner, if I was to say anything, I'm an inner north and inner northwest specialist. I've grown up in the north of Melbourne. So I know those areas like the back of my hand, but not to say I haven't purchased in the south, east or west, know. It's obviously what the client needs at the end of the day. So I'm there to help them. Yeah,
of course. And I think we all have our areas of specialty, like, where we grow up, we know it like the back of our hand. So it's like, if you want to know all the good cafes around the area, you want to know exactly where the dodgy part of the suburb is. I know about it. So it's like you're better off talking to someone who actually lives and breathes that suburb, who's been around it for a long time, who understands, that locality. I think that's huge. So, but at the same time, buying in other suburbs and, traveling that far out is great for clients who don't always have the opportunity to find an advocate, in their given location, because not a lot of advocates are out there that actually cover a lot of different locations. They're very specified.
Well, yeah, you've got to be across different locations, different states, different regulations. There's a lot to unpack. So we've got to be across it all, and all the legislation, everything that's changing. It's a lot. So, it's good for our clients because it's a real value add to them, bringing my knowledge to them.
At least. Now, I want to take it back a step and start at the beginning. How did you come into this space? Like, what made you say, okay, I'm going to be a buyer's advocate and, jump into the world of property?
That's a really good question. I've started my buyer's advocacy about 3+ years ago. Prior to that, I was in construction. So I was working, very long hours, say 6 till 6, really busting my ass for that money.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really getting like much reward out of it. Like you don't even get so much as a thank you, you know?
Yeah.
And you're really capped working for someone. I really wanted to go out and venture on my own and do my own thing. I've always liked property. So even when you had those magazines, like back in the day, those realestate.com,
Oh my God.
I always used to flick through them every week. So like I've always had a love for property, and obviously when buying your first property, you just get that property bug.
Yeah.
And ever since then I've just loved it, you know. So I just want to bring my passion and help others sort of achieve their goals now.
I think that's a great why. Thanks for that answer. I think one of the things that always, when you start business, I know for myself, your why is often coming from your own experience. So I find it really important that you're able to connect with the people that you're helping, because you're like, hey, I've been where you are, I've done all the mistakes. And
oh, absolutely, I've done the mistakes. So like a little story, like my first home, before we even started, so we bought a 1960s home in the north, and before we even started the sort of renovation, came up with 20. We had to pay 20,000 in underpinning costs because we didn't get a building and pest inspection. So
oh my God.
I'm wanting to make sure that no one does that. You know?
Yep.
No one makes the same mistakes I've done, so they can benefit, you know.
And I think that's, I want to ask you this question rather than, me giving my 2 cents. But I think, number one, you answering that question is fantastic, because I think a lot of people assume that buyers advocates have never gotten it wrong. They do this as a profession. They've always gotten it spot on, whereas I was pretty similar. I built my first home and had so many issues, and we had unexpected costs in the similar ballpark. So it comes from your experience that you're like, no way. What if
well, you got to learn from your mistakes. And so we're here to make sure you avoid those costly mistakes, because we know what those are.
Exactly. And I think buyers advocacy in general, it's not really a new concept. It's been around in Australia for a very long time. Like, I know advocates that have been in the game for 25 plus years, but with all these shows coming out like Selling Sunset, and you've got $1 Million Listing, it's become more popularized, and people are getting more familiar in this day and age that, oh crap, well, they've got a buyer's agent. I don't have a buyer's agent. Why don't we have that? What would you say to someone who's never heard of the service? Like maybe they're tuning into this episode because we get a lot of first-time buyers in our show who's saying, why would I use a buyer's agent? My parents said I could do it myself.
Like, first of all, I love those shows.
Yeah, me too.
I totally binge them when they come out. But yeah, so why you would pick a buyer's agent and go with a buyer's agent? Obviously, it's their experience, their connections in the industry. It's the opportunity cost as well. Like, it could take you 6 months, 9 months to buy. With us, it might take you 2-3 weeks to 8 weeks, you know. And in that time, you could lose a substantial amount of growth. So we get access to pre-market, off-market properties that obviously the general public don't get access to, which is a big value add. We do all our due diligence checks. We have to go through a process before a property meets, obviously, the standards that we uphold, you know. So why you look, some people can do it themselves. Like, a buyer's agent isn't for everyone, but I do see our industry within the next 5 years, there's going to be a buyer's agent and a real estate agent as part of the one transaction. That's just the way things are headed. We're one of the fastest growing professions in Australia. So that's just the way I see things happening in the near future. And yeah, it's not just for the wealthy as sort of people think it is. It's really for everyday Australians.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, like, the myth busting that people have this idea that to have a buyer's agent, you have to be a millionaire, and that's or you're a really wealthy investor and you're going to start a portfolio, you have a portfolio, but it's so not true. Like, I often say this to, buyers who ask me about, advocacy, and it's always about, you wouldn't go to, like, let's say you're getting sued. You wouldn't go to court, all right, and do self-representation against someone who's suing you, who's lawyered up. That's the equivalent of how I find it when you go to a real estate transaction in this market, that you're going to a property, you're going to buy it yourself, but you're self-representing. So you don't know the market in and out like an advocate would. You don't know the negotiation tactics. But on top of that, the due diligence, like you said, making mistakes like not doing a building and pest inspection, like these things you're not expected to know as a buyer.
Well, a lot of people don't even know that the negotiation starts from the first point of contact.
Yep.
So the very first moment you speak to a real estate agent, they're already taking notes about you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's understanding sort of how you got to speak to the agent. Look, it's good to keep them on site because they have your listings, and so there's that sort of I would say stigma that you got to not tell the agent anything.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Like, you got to build rapport with them. They're gonna want to have to deal with you. So if you have treated them poorly, they're going to be less inclined to deal with you.
It's true. And I think, have you seen that play out before? Have you seen buyers that kind of go through the journey? I think a lot of people go through missing out on offers and they get very disheartened. And this is what also lengthens their time on market. It's attending auctions, maybe not building rapport with the agent at the start, like you said. Have you seen that play out when you've got clients that come to you after being on market for a long time and they're telling you their war stories and you're like, okay, here's where I think you could have done different?
I've literally had a client purchase for him earlier this year. They were looking for 2+ years. We were able to purchase for them in 2 weeks.
Wow, that's huge.
It's really nailed. You have to sort of go very deep into their brief and see what they're actually after. Is it realistic in their budget? Because a lot of people think that the properties are going to go in listing range, or they're listening to whatever the agent says. No, you need to do your own due diligence. Check comparables, see what things are actually transacting for, and that will save you a lot of time.
100%. I think you've said that spot on. The comparables in the area of like what has sold and then what's on market or what's gone in at auction. This is actually another question I'd love to ask, because auction seems to be the biggest pain point for a lot of buyers, especially in high auction areas where they're going from property to property. They're missing out and they keep missing out because auctions are flying way over the reserve price. They're going in thinking that their budget is, they're going there with a mindset of, okay, the agent's advertised, 550 to 600. And then the property sells for 650 and you're like, I was never going to 650. Like, what's your kind of advice to these buyers, or how do you actually handle this when you're at auction? Because auction's tough.
Look, when I hate to say this, but like when I go to auction and I know I'm against first home buyers, like I know they've got no chance in hell. Like you can sort of tell when they're sort of getting towards the end of their budget, they're sort of starting to fidget with their hands, or they're starting to get on their phone, talking to their partner, whispering in their ears. So you can sort of tell when they're getting to the end of their budget. If someone's gone to auction, just a little tip, like this is something I do. I refer to the auctioneer by name to make it seem like we've got rapport. I bid very confidently. So if you've chucked the bid out, I'll bid straight away. I'll try to disrupt the bidding pattern as well. If you go up by 10, I might go up by 5, then drop it down to, if let's say you go by 5, I might bring it back up to 7. I sort of try to disrupt it. It's all psychology at the end of the day. And sort of reading the room. A lot of it's adaptability on the fly. That's what I sort of find when I go to auction.
I think what you've described is the best example of what a lot of people don't do at auction. I think there's an idea that you kind of, like the ads that you see for REA or Domain, and it's like always someone that just runs up to the property, puts their hand up, they've won the property and it's happy days. But in reality, you're up against advocates. And if people are now hiring more and more advocates in these highly sought after locations, you are very quickly going to find yourself in the position of that other buyer you had who's been on market, 9 months, 2 years. Like the nationwide average for time on market is 9 months. It's a long time. Like, that is 3 times that your pre-approval has lapsed if you've gone through a broker. So you've got your pre-approval, that's lapsed 3 times. You still haven't found a home. All that time and money spent on driving to auctions, petrol, getting lunches in those certain areas, driving around, working all week and then waiting for the weekends. All of that effort can be saved or summed up into, something that I'd say under 6 weeks you could do with an advocate.
Oh, absolutely. And in that 9 months, that property may have grown by $50,000. So you're already $50K, whereas you could have hired an advocate for, let's say, I don't know, anywhere from $13,000 to $25,000. and you could have made up that gap in 1 month, you know. But that's not the only way they save you money.
Correct. And like, you know, tell us a little bit about that. So what other ways do you see advocates working? Like, because I really want to unpack this for the listeners. I think it's so crucial to understand the value that an advocate brings. And I think we've talked about a lot of value add already, but, you know, what is one of the other ways that, you know, advocates can save you money?
Well, obviously it's not getting emotional at auction, not overpaying for a property. So we have a limit going into auction. If we reach that limit, did you want me to give you a call and see, like, if I can see that, oh, look, maybe that other buyer has only got maybe couple K left, maybe give me an extra 5 and I can secure it for you. But yeah, obviously in negotiation, we can save you. Picking the right location is probably the main thing. If you pick something obviously on the wrong street, or let's say you've got a freeway running through a suburb, one side of the suburb's going for 100K less, one side's going for 100K more. That's a lot of money at the end of the day, you know?
Big difference.
So pretty much it's a lot of it's the opportunity cost. That's the main thing, and obviously the long-term growth of the property. If we pick the right asset at the end of the day, I'm going to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run.
No, that's awesome. And I think this is super important for those listening who, you know, like I said, they're in that first time buyer and they haven't felt the pain point yet. If they're in their first month of the journey, they think it's still all rosy and peaches, there's hope.
It's all happy days.
That's right. And then we've probably got some other listeners who are tuning in who've been on the market for 9 months going, maybe I should just give you a call because I'm done. You know, it's an exhausting process, something that is typically branded to be exciting and uplifting, often then turns sour after the time spent on market. Whereas if we start adapting, like when you're selling your home, the first thing you think about is, oh, I'm going to get a real estate agent, because you look at all the work that you need to do to market the property and sell it, and you're put off by it because it's a lot. But then you'll part ways with 2 to 3% of the purchase with a real estate agent, but you won't do the same to purchase the asset. And that's what I'm trying to sort of do with this podcast, is say, have balance in the market, like it's the same thing.
Well, the vendor's got someone representing them.
Correct.
Why not the buyer?
Yep.
You're trying to negotiate against a person that's trained to deal with negotiation on a daily basis. Like, that's crazy to me. If you don't do this in your job, or you're not a good negotiator, like, you're going up against a professional. They're going to absolutely take advantage of you.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how you cut it. It's like their job is to get a good price for the vendor. They will try and help you out as much as they can, but at the end of the day, they are still employed by a vendor to do a job, which is sell the home to you. So if that means, and I wanted to ask you about your experience with this, if it means telling little white lies like, oh, we have other buyers, you've got to put in the offer today, you know, there's a lot of urgency that real estate agents can create.
At least for me, being on both sides of the transaction, I can sort of see what the agents do. So when I go into a negotiation for my buyer, I sort of know the tricks that they're going to play. So they can't pull the wool over my eyes, you know. There is sometimes instances where they go, oh, there's only one buyer, but they're pitting you against yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
But you don't know that because you don't know the dialogue. You don't know, you're not trained to sort of deal with speaking to agents on a daily basis.
It's so true. And I want to switch gears a little bit because, you know, it's interesting that you also cover vendor advocacy. That side of the transaction in a buyer's advocacy, you know, you've got both sides within your business. How do you go about balancing? Like, do you ever have buyers that obviously want to buy the stock that you have listed, or is that not really that common?
No, it's not really that common for me. Yeah, obviously it's a conflict of interest, so I wouldn't go down that path. But I've never had that happen to me. I've never ever had that happen to me. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't in the future.
It's like, note to anyone who wants his services, don't do it to him.
Look, the big value out of obviously a vendor advocate is it's a free service. So I know for me it's a free service, but there are some vendor advocates that do charge the client. For me, it's really giving you a neutral opinion on the value of a home. I'm not going to go into the home and go, oh, this property is worth, let's say it's worth $1 million. This property is worth 1.2 million just to secure the listing. No, I'm going to tell you the real value of the property. And then what we essentially do is we help interview the top 3 agents for your circumstance. So whether that be, there's no point getting, you're selling a home for $1 million. There's no point you getting someone that sells apartments. They're just not going to have the database, you know? So yeah, obviously we choose the right agents for your circumstance. We'll give you tips on marketing, renovations, as well. Like I should have mentioned before, like I've done complete renovations for myself, partial renovations for my clients as well. So I know a bit about it. I know what materials I'm working with at the end of the day. I know how I can add value and ultimately what issues may arise as well. So yeah, we essentially become the vendor at the end of the day, and the way we get paid is we split commission with the real estate agent at the end of the process. So we'll help negotiate that real estate agent's fees, and yeah, we split commission with them at the end of the process. So you get pretty much 2 agents working for you for the price of 1.
I think this is super interesting because, like you said, there's some vendors advocates. For those who are tuning in, who are just hearing this term for the first time, they're like, "Isn't that a real estate agent?" No, it's not a real estate agent. They are advocating for you as the vendor, working in your favor and doing all these things that you just mentioned.
Yes, we deal with the real estate agent. Real estate agent obviously deals with us, and we deal with the seller.
See, that's
you only got
awesome.
1 point of contact.
So in terms of price difference, versus say, I go down the traditional route, I just, go to Ray White, get a real estate agent, they're going to sell my house because I know their brand, I like their brand, let's say, and they're going to charge me, 2% for the transaction. So you would be splitting that commission and you would negotiate that deal?
Yeah. So we'll know sort of what the fees average. Like if a real estate agent comes and goes, "Oh, I'm going to charge you 2.5%. Well, no, you're not. That's ripping my seller off,
Yeah.
So for us, and why we do it is because we essentially, if we help them sell, then they're going to need to buy.
Yeah, correct.
So then we help them through the whole process, the whole journey,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, even if it's the other way around, I just had a client we just bought for him, and now we're selling for him. Sometimes it's within a short time frame because there's bridging loans and stuff like that.
Yeah,
we need to move quickly,
And I think this is something that I have to tell you like a scenario, right? And I'll get you to answer it. So buyer the other day, right? They are selling their home. So they put it on market. They got a buyer for it. They weren't really happy with the price the offer came in at. Buyer didn't want to budge. It was the only buyer they'd had in 2 months. And this is, we're working with the agent on the real estate side. So this is down in Noble Park area. Now on the other side, the seller wanted to also purchase at the same time. So I don't work on the tools on buyer's advocacy. This is the story of this client. They've come to me in the middle of all this chaos. And they're like, "I've put in an offer. It's been accepted. The settlement's the same day. The deposit's due on the same time. But now I'm forced to take that offer because I really want to buy that other property." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." Now we're coming up to deposit time and there's an issue. So their conveyancer didn't advise them that bridging finance, they thought a Section 27, which is, for those that are listening, early release of deposit. Yep. So it just means that basically when your deposit's paid, it goes into your account rather than sitting in the trust account. So you have access to that funds. Typically you can then, use that money straight away if you want to buy furniture, things like that. It gives you a bit of movement. But you can't apply for a Section 27 until it's unconditional. So if the purchasers of, their home, that's what happened. So they went through that process. The conveyancer didn't say you need bridging finance or you need to look at options to pay your deposit for purchase.
Yeah.
What happened was they defaulted. They couldn't do their deposit payment.
It seems very messy.
Unbelievably messy. And, she said, now I'm paying, the vendors have charged interest and, she goes, "I don't know what to do." And I just said, far out. This is why you get help earlier, but look, let's try and fix this. I would be so curious to see, because we get these random, type of phone calls a lot, where people are in really tight spots and they're like, "What do I do? How do I get myself out of this?" And it's often you got to jump straight into action like a superhero and go, "Okay, let me talk to all the professionals and see what's going on."
Yeah, that's why it's so essential to get a buyer's advocate as well, because we liaise with all your broker, conveyancer, accountant, financial planner, anyone a part of the process. So we avoid all this, Well,
that was
we could have avoided this from the start.
So that's my whole, question, how could you see this transaction not going down this route?
This is tricky. I've never had this situation happen to me, so it's a bit hard to answer because I haven't been put in this situation. Honestly,
Well, I guess what's the most important way to start. Obviously, advocacy is one, but let's say you don't have an advocate, or you can't, you don't think you can afford one, and you're going to go down this route of doing it yourself. What could this person have done from day one to avoid it?
Well, obviously, have all your professionals in place from the start. Tell them this is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So they can structure you right, and advise accordingly, not just go out and do it and then go, oh shit, I'm in a spot now. Can you get me out?
Yep. It
doesn't work like that,
I think professionals, I call it your buying team.
Yeah.
Who's your buying team made up of? It's obviously your mortgage broker, your conveyancer, a building and pest inspector, maybe a removalist, and buyer's advocate.
Surely out of those 5, they'll be able to come up with a solution,
You would think so.
Yeah.
But then there's also the cases where a lot of professionals don't communicate together. So it's like you're not having the introductions done early enough. So
well, that's why we're connecting them at the start of the process. We're setting expectations at the start. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just the way I operate. But
it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
When you reach out and set that expectation from the start and go, hello, I am the buyer's agent.
Expectation is everything. If you don't set expectation at the start, it can spiral quickly.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think what you talked about is so, spot on in the sense of why support is needed, why you should be at least having a conversation with these professionals. I think the vendors advocacy side is super interesting because there's a lot of listeners that are in the position of selling and buying at the same time and doing simultaneous settlements or having to do bridging finance or maybe renting. What's your kind of advice or guidance to those buyers who are in the position where they've sold their home, they're trying to move into the next purchase, but what if they don't find their home in time and they can't settle?
Well, you might have to look at renting, short-term rental. Typically like 3 months is enough time for us. I've never sort of had a client go over that.
Yeah.
So it just actually depends on the price point. Like if we're talking multi-million, then there might be fewer listings to go after. But if it's your everyday typical property, then 3 months is more than enough time. You would just have to look at the options, go maybe move in with the in-laws, move in with your parents for a couple of weeks, month, whatever it is. Just you're going to have to make that sacrifice till we can purchase, No,
that makes sense. And I think that's fair. I think like you said, setting those expectations of what could happen and being ready for those options, I think is important.
Obviously, being ready at the start, present them with all the scenarios. Yeah. And you can decide which way you want to go.
Makes sense. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is asset types. I think this is often overlooked. A lot of clients I've spoken to in the past usually go by price point. So they're like, look, this is the budget I have. All I can afford is an apartment. And it's like in this very specific suburb I want. Is there a specific asset type that you see yields the most amount of growth, whether that's, going to a development? Like I'm more switching gears into the investors side of the coin. So when you're starting out that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know for me and my philosophy, I sort of just deal in the established properties, as much land as possible. As you know, land appreciates and buildings depreciate. So I try to get as much land as possible within their budget. Nice. I try to find a property where I can add value to the property, whether it's, let's say it's a 2-bed, try to convert it into a 3-bed. Is it a 3-bed? Try to convert it into a 4-bed and create equity that way instead of waiting for the market to do something.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's sort of the route I take them down. Whereas some first home buyers actually come to me and go, I want to buy an apartment. Yeah, no problems. But that'll be more a lifestyle choice than more a wealth building choice,
Yeah.
Because as we know, some apartments do go backwards in a sort of like a 10-year period, and I've seen a lot of horror stories.
And they're always at VCAT.
Yeah.
There's always a building problem.
Yeah.
There's actually like a couple of apartments, that I was looking at them. I love looking at property. I'm very similar. And when I was checking out the sales history, this one apartment did not change in price since 2017. It was sold at 500,000, 505. It was sold 5 times in that period between now and 2022. Story. And it's always in the same price. And I'm like, far out. Like someone's really working hard to make sure it doesn't fall below that 5 number. But it's interesting to me. It's like, I wonder if it was oversold at the beginning when it was off plan. 500,000 was overpriced, and now we're seeing the market trend.
Yeah, I've got a perfect example. I just had a client we purchased in the inner north in Essendon. The vendor paid 1,650 for it. 1 mil 650,000 at the height of COVID. We ended up purchasing it for 1,458. So they're going to take a 200 and something loss in stamps and stuff. They're going to take a 200 and something K loss.
Oh God, that makes me feel sick.
Yeah, like, I do feel sorry for the sellers. My buyers are ecstatic.
Of course they are. Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was all about positioning and when to go for this property, because this property actually passed the net auction.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing, like more from a market side, current market update. Like if we're looking at, investors who are getting into the property market now, we're in nearly halfway through to 2025, which is scary to think that we're fast approaching in May. What kind of trends are you seeing emerge this year that somehow seem different to last year, if anything?
There's a lot happening in Melbourne. Melbourne is the talk of the town. A lot of investors are coming back to Melbourne and Vic Regional. There's a lot of spots where it's still affordable.
Yeah,
your yields are not going to be the best, but obviously I do see we're early in the growth cycle, so we're at the bottom of the market cycle here. So I do see a full growth cycle, and that's why a lot of people are coming back here. There's parts of there's parts of the south that we're investing in. There's parts of the north, and there's also parts of the west that we're targeting, as well as Vic regional centres, sort of sub that 650 mark.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why a lot of people come in here? It's very undervalued. Like a lot of the capital cities, their median prices have caught up to us. So I've just had a Sydney investor going, look, if I was to buy this property that we just purchased for them, they would be going 50 kilometers out of the city, whereas we purchased within 20 kilometers, subdividable block, which is crazy to them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They're like, we're going to go out so far. So yeah, they're really seeing the value down here. You're getting big blocks here, and it's still affordable.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But not for long.
Not for long. Yeah, I like that. So, well, this is the interesting part, because last year, when they did the summary, I think it was CoreLogic came out with their report, and they said that, in terms of property value and prices, Melbourne went backwards. Like Victoria went backwards by like 3.5% or something like that. Yep. I'm like, far out. Okay. And then you've got places like Perth that are still, in the 17%, area.
Like that market, I would say, hasn't got too much left in it. There's a lot of declining suburbs at the moment in Perth. There's still a lot of people in regional Queensland at the moment. It just obviously depends on their price point, but obviously a lot of people are spending 650, 700 over there. Yeah. Where it makes more sense to spend it in the capital city within 20 kilometres of a CBD.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's like down here, I think, we've got the western suburbs that are all very much still affordable and kind of new in some ways, like our Tarneit area. But no, hear me out. All right, hear me out. I went to an auction, right? And this was a few weeks ago, advertised at 515, right? There's an asking up to 5, I think it was 545, something like that. It was sold way over. It was sitting at 605,000 was the final price that it went for. And I'm like, how are the properties still existing in this area in this price bracket? What do you think the reasoning is? Like, is that because of the demographics?
The problem I see with those areas, there's too much land supply.
Right.
Truganina, Tarneit.
Yep.
There's just endless amounts of land supply, which is only going to sort of stem growth in the future. You're going to have a lot of the same properties coming on the market. You're going to find it difficult to sell. We try to get landlocked suburbs where you can't build anymore. There's no more supply.
Interesting.
It's all about the demand and supply, So you could sort of maybe target a bit closer in, I would say, even for that budget, Yeah. A bit closer in the west there. Could be some suburbs around there to target. Maybe a Deer Park, for instance.
Oh, true. Yeah, because that's already developed.
That's already developed. You got all the infrastructure in place. Amenities are all there. Whereas these sort of suburbs, Tarneit, Truganina, a lot of it's still getting developed.
Well, that's the thing, because there's a lot of talk that it is being developed. So, the infrastructure coming in is going to increase value over the long term. And,
but how long do you want to wait for equity?
Well, that's the other question, right? And I think this brings up a really important topic to talk about is often when you're buying or when you're starting your investment portfolio, you have to have a goal in mind. What is that goal? How much does that influence how you buy buy for your client, based on if they're doing it for cash flow, if they're doing it, obviously for an owner-occupier home that they want to move into, that's different. But when we look at the investing space.
Yeah, there's not a one-size-fits-all to invest in. Each client brief is different. They might begin their first investment, or they might be into their second, third. So they might have a different risk appetite once they get to the later on in their portfolio. So it really is about tailoring your investment choices to their brief. You really got to nail that brief. Obviously, in my first session, I really just try to listen and see what their goals are, where they are now, where they want to be. That's really important. So I don't even spend the first session I speak with someone talking about myself. That comes in my second session.
I love that. That's why I wanted to give you this opportunity, because I feel like a lot of professionals don't. Typically they do talk about themselves, of course, and their service when they're talking to a client, but I don't think you really get the opportunity to explain the full value of what you do. You kind of just start the process and the journey where you start, which is
well, it's obviously preempting that with a couple of emails prior to obviously your meeting. Just setting expectation as I mentioned before.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's important. That's super important. Now, I think one of the things that we talked about, and the reason I'm referring to my notes here is because I had a couple of specific questions I wanted to talk about. You mentioned, we've talked about Lux homes, especially that one that you mentioned about, that higher price bracket, they've lost 200,000. How different or difficult is it to buy in that price range? Because I don't find that there's a whole heap on market. You often see those properties sitting there for 2, 3, 6 months on market.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's having those real estate agent relationships. They're going to give you access to your off-market listings. A lot of those, they're very private people, so they don't really want a lot of people coming through their homes. What I find is you're normally dealing with high net individuals, so they want you're going to make it as easy as possible for them. They've got no time to waste.
Yeah.
So you really got to manage the whole process from start to finish and really nail everything before you sort of present something to them.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of prep.
A lot of prep for obviously those types of people that we deal with in terms of those high net individuals. They've typically CEOs, directors of companies. They haven't got too much time. You almost got to schedule times to talk to them. Yeah, pretty much. So that's what I find a lot in that space. Very time poor.
Yeah. So how do buyers that are looking at this luxury market, because there's a few, obviously floating around, like maybe the probably in their 30s, 40s, that are looking at that first time really big, maybe not their first, but their second property. So they're upsizing from what they bought in their first home. Maybe they've made some money off the back of it. They can now afford something in the luxury market. How different is that buying process to what you would do for those ones that are basically under $1 million and under?
Yeah, it's a lot of more due diligence up front.
Right, gotcha.
It's getting everything, as I mentioned before, everything's got to be done for them prior.
Okay.
Whereas your typical buyer, you can sort of run through, get their expectations first and get their feedback, and there's a lot of back and forth, whereas you got to limit that with high net individuals.
Yeah, so it's a very different way of actually dealing with the client specifically.
Yeah, you've got to adapt to the client.
Yeah.
You got to sort of become a chameleon, depending on the client. So yeah, it really is a bit of a different transaction. And they sort of know what they want at that price point. They're like, look, just go get me this.
Yeah. Okay.
And then call me once it's done.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like there's all the pressure.
Yeah.
I love it. And, we're coming close to the end. This has been such a good interview, and I think so interesting. One of the last things I wanted to, I've got 2 last questions for you. One of them is, what are some of the most common mistakes you do see home buyers making in the market, and how can listeners avoid them?
Well, one, I would say overpaying, getting emotional at auctions and in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K above your budget, and then they're like, oh shit. So I do see it a lot. I also see a lot of people at opens and inspections, like they're overindulging and telling the real estate agent too much info. Like you can still speak to the agent, but be a bit more vague in your answers, like.
Can you give an example?
Like, what's your budget for, like, if I'm the agent, what's your budget? Well, it just depends on the property.
Okay. Rather than me saying my budget's 600,000.
Correct. You don't have to tell them, like, you go, oh, look, it could be, it just depends, you know, like I wouldn't point out that this is, like, if you're really excited about this role, I wouldn't be jumping up and down, you know, I'd be a bit more discreet. But yeah, you just gotta know how to position yourself and sort of see what interest there is in the property as well. You got to take note of your surroundings.
And it goes back to the point, like you said at the start, don't totally close off to the agents. Like, you don't want to walk in like a mute and, you know, stonewall them, because then you can't build.
You got to show them that you're interested as well, you know?
That's right, because then they'll reach out and try and work the deal a little bit. But there's a way to talk to them, which I think is really good advice, you know, and I think that's what a lot of people kind of say it as black and white. It's, well, I'm either talking to them or I'm not, so what am I doing? It's like being a bit vague. Just interested, but not so specific.
And another thing, like real estate agents like dealing with buyer's agents. They know that it's going to be a much smoother transaction if they're dealing with a buyer's agent.
That's so true.
To someone with the general public, where they're like, oh, this is a headache, you know?
Because you've got to worry about finance. Have they done their due diligence? Can you trust what the buyer's saying?
We've already got that in place. We know that they're already pre-qualified and ready to go.
Yeah, that's your secret weapon in the market. But having an advocate on your side, a buyer's agent or advocate in this case, is a massive weapon, I feel like, especially when not everyone's doing it. So you have a much bigger edge in the market when you're not going, because it's not often. Have you come across those scenarios? Have you ever had another buyer's agent at a property listing buying the same property?
Absolutely.
And how does that?
It's becoming more and more common these days.
That's what I mean. Of like, if we look at this 5 years ago, I don't think that was very common. Yeah. And now, fast forward 5 years on, this is what I'm seeing.
It's becoming a bit more of the norm, you know.
Yeah.
And how I deal with it, just the same way I deal with everything. Like, I back myself to get the deal done. And
I think this is what's interesting, like from what you said, having that advocate presence, like at the auction or at the open for inspections, or being able to purchase for you. And then you're seeing the difference when another buyer's advocate comes in. This is the time to start, you know, this cycle, jumping on that, you know, of bandwagon, for lack of a better word, but getting an advocate in your corner now rather than waiting 10 years where it does become very, very competitive again in a different way.
Yeah. And speaking about the market this year, like with interest rates coming down as well, you're going to see influx of buyers get back into the market, which is only going to increase competition. Property prices are going to go up, you know, so you need that competitive edge over everyone else.
So no, good note to end it on, I think. Thank you so much for your time. It was so good to chat to you, Rob. You know, with listeners who enjoyed this episode and want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Just my website, luxbuyersagents.com.au. Just go to fill out my contact form on my contact page. And yeah, or else I'm on every social you can think of, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever you want.
Amazing. So everyone can go there, check it out and get in touch with you, Rob. But once again, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insights and also just your experience. I think this has been a really good episode for anyone who's actually looking for that one-stop shop kind of solution. If you're looking to sell, start a property portfolio, or maybe you're looking to buy your first home, Rob's a really good, you know, company to actually go and visit, even just to have a consultation and just understand what it's all about and how they customize plans to your needs. So
it's free. What do you got to lose?
That's exactly right. So we'll drop some details about how you can actually book that consultation with Rob in the episode description, so you can get started straight away. I think, you know, a free conversation, you know, for an hour chat is not going to cost you anything at all, and you might actually learn something. So thanks again, Rob.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jo.
Of course. Listeners, you'll find Rob's episode contact details all in the episode description. Thank you all for tuning into the No BS Real Estate podcast, and remember to subscribe, share the episode with anyone who might benefit from Rob's expert advice, and join us next time as we continue to cut through the noise and tackle your property journey together. Thanks, guys. That's a wrap for this episode of the No BS Real Estate podcast, powered by Abodey AI. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more guidance on your home buying journey, you can visit www.abodey.com.au for expert advice, property insights, and the tools you need to find the right home with confidence. If you're already on your journey, you can also download our app. Just search Abodey AI on the App Store or Google Play. Have any questions or want to connect, you can follow us on Instagram at abodey.com.au or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.